Good morning and welcome to Birding with Extension's Cup Chat. I am so glad to be back, and hello to all of our new followers out there. I guess we could introduce ourselves, Bryan, because we really haven't been on for a little while. So I'm Emily Grant, and I am currently the county agent here in Val Verde County. And joining me today is our special guest, Bryan Calk, and he is, I keep wanting to put OG, off of House original guide. And I just am not sure how well everyone understands what OG means, because, and technically our other Birding with Extension member is not with us today, and so we can make fun of her all we want. She should know better than to leave us alone, because I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about putting OG on some of our marketing stuff and as our original guide, and I thought, I don't even think she would understand what that means. I don't think she knows. So there you go. This is bash number one of our fun friend, Maureen, Dr. Maureen Frank, who's our wildlife specialist, who's our other partner with Extension. So there we go. Fun moment there. So Bryan, you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself? And I'm going to pull up on Facebook so that we can see if anyone is joining us. Please comment if you are joining us and where you're joining us from.
Sure. My name is Bryan Calk. I grew up in South Texas in Kinney County at Fort Clark Springs, but I now live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I am currently a full-time birding guide and birding in nature educator, and I've been partnered with Birding with Extension as a guide and consultant and many other things for, gosh, I don't know what year this is now.
I think we're on year 5. I think I counted the other day.
That sounds right. Yeah.
So I think we are on year 5. So hi, Patricia. Thank you for joining us from Rockwell. We really enjoy it when y'all can comment as we are live. So today, Bryan and I, first of all, we haven't done a 30-second commercial forever. And so, Bryan, tell us a little bit and give us your 30-second commercial for Learn to Bird. So Learn to Bird is our new program. This is our second year to host this program, and it is targeting beginner and new birders who want to take their birding to the next level. Also, if you have just never taken a birding trip, and you're really used to birding at home, this is a great program for you at a kind of a beginner level to step outside of your home birds and kind of see what a birding trip is like. So, Bryan, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to give a good commercial for Learn to Bird.
Okay, I'll do my best. 30 seconds. Okay. Learn to Bird is honestly one of my favorite programs that we do. I personally love working with beginner birders and seeing the world of birds through their eyes. It's really invigorating and exciting for me. So I'm personally very excited for more Learn to Bird this fall. And Learn to Bird is just a great opportunity for a really slow-paced couple of days of birding where we teach you everything from how to properly use your binoculars to how to properly spot birds in the field. And we give you a lot of tools for success for the long run in your time in birding. And, this is targeted towards beginners, but if you've been birding a little bit, that's great too. There's something for everyone to learn. And we are going to be in some really cool, amazing places where I think we have a lot of potential to see some really cool and interesting birds. So I'm excited for it, and I hope you join us.
Well, and not only are we going to be able to see some really cool birds, we're going to be able to hopefully see some alligators too.
Always a bonus. Always. We love all the wildlife.
Yeah. So we have 2 Learn to Bird locations, and we've got 2 Learn to Bird locations. One is in Fort Bend County at Long Acres Ranch will be our host site. And then our second location is going to be in Kerrville, and we're going to be kind of home based out of the Kerrville, the Kerr Wildlife Management area. Patricia, thank you for asking when and where those programs are coming up in October, and I will put a link in the comments so that you can go check out our website with all that information. So anyways, Learn to Bird is going to be really interesting. We're excited to be offering 2 new locations and hopefully share the birding experience. And Bryan is our guide. So not only are you getting extension specialists and extension personnel there to educate you, we do bring in Bryan as a professional birding guide to make sure it is a great experience. So today we're talking about Phishing. So first of all, let's kind of, for some of those people who may be new or beginner birders, what is Phishing? And it is not spelled Phishing, like I'm stealing all your information off the internet. But I can't spell, so it probably was spelled somewhere like that on social media. But Bryan, tell us a little bit about what is Phishing, maybe what does it accomplish, and then we'll kind of dive into that world in a little bit.
Sure. So Phishing is another tool in your birding toolkit, basically. And it's where the birder makes noises with their mouth, typically, to sort of simulate the sounds that agitated birds make. So kind of that scolding, harsh sound. So I can give you an example really quickly. So this is like one of my go-to pitches. It's like, and so it's just kind of that scolding sound. I hope that came through. I don't know, but
you look like a dork, even if it didn't.
Okay, cool, great, yeah, awesome. And so when birds hear that sort of scolding sound, they think, something's going on over here, something's going down, basically. And maybe there's a predator that someone's trying to scare away, or maybe there's a territorial dispute going on. Who knows what they're thinking, really. But all these little birds come down and kind of check it out and see what's going on. So the idea is that you do this thing with your mouth and the birds come in closer. Particularly, we're hoping to find some of the species that stay really high up in the trees, and maybe they'll come down a little bit where it's easier to see, or species that are really skulky and stay down low in the brush and like to stay hidden. Maybe they'll pop up for just a second and you can get a view of what they are. So that's basically what Phishing is and kind of why we do it, and a little bit why it works.
Well, and so let's kind of keep going there in terms of how is there a right time to pitch? Is there a wrong time to pitch? I get sometimes very frustrated with birds because I'm not necessarily the most patient person. And so I'm sure some other ones out there can relate. And especially since I don't bird by ear very well, I need the only way I can see them is to visualize them. And so one thing I would say also is just because I walk out my front door and start pitching, is that an effective place and time to do that?
So pretty much you can, I mean, in my opinion, you can try Phishing pretty much whenever, wherever. Like anything, I mean, I recommend doing it in moderation. You are disturbing the birds, and that's, there's a lot of controversy surrounding that, depending on the time of year and what else is going on, and a lot of things. And as far as where you can do it, really anywhere. There are days where I'm guiding and I'm really trying to get folks on birds, and there aren't that many birds around to begin with, or they're all hiding or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, at least I can do some Phishing and try to work up some birds for people to look at. And I push my lips off, and then nothing happens for no obvious reason. So sometimes
birding
works,
the hill.
Doesn't. Exactly. Yeah, let's never speak of that.
The birding program that shall not be named.
Yes, yeah, we'll go with that. Yeah, there are just times where the birds just truly do not care. And I have not really observed a pattern or rhyme or reason why that happens sometimes. Because other times you just pish for 5 seconds and then there's birds in your face from every direction and you don't know which way to look. Um, so if you go in your front yard and start fishing, it might work, it might not.
Well, and one thing I always think, when we're out birding together is that you
Mhm.
typically bird, when you start fishing, you really make sure that we are in a good habitat place. And I
Mhm.
assume that it's typically when you're hearing a lot of things, but not
Mhm.
seeing things. And so that's just my observation as someone who birds with you. Is sometimes it's just, I can't imagine walking out on my front porch is not going to be very beneficial. It's not great habitat for a lot of, I actually have a lot of birds in my yard, but not like a lot. Anyways, so you've been to my house. It's not
Mhm.
like a lush, beautiful habitat. Uh,
There are. I saw some Buick friends there last time. I think they might pop up for you, but not a whole lot else, maybe. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The habitat does make a difference, and whether I'm by myself or with a group, I try to not only see, am I hearing birds already? That's a good sign that I could fish here. Um, is this really dense habitat with probably birds hiding inside of it? Then probably I might want to try some fishing and just see if anyone's home. Not only am I looking at that, but also when I do start fishing, I'm gonna be strategical about where I I don't know what
not
the
sure
spirit.
that's a word, but
I
it's
don't know.
okay.
We'll go with it.
We don't have any
But,
rules on Cup Chat. You can make up your own words, apparently.
oh, great! I love that rule. Okay, but I'll position myself in a place that's it, not to the degree of like I'm wearing camo and I'm going hunting or something, but you don't want to
Wear
just be like
camo.
right you don't want to just be like right out in the open like I'm the one who's fishing little birds, like you want to kind of tuck yourself in a little bit and that way the birds feel more comfortable in popping out. You might get a better view. So just to make the most of what you're doing.
I'm gonna buy you a camo shirt now.
Oh, great.
Get you one.
Well,
Um, Okay, so I think that that's this just interesting point. And we talked a little, you mentioned a little bit about disturbing birds can be controversial.
mhm.
So, what is the difference between using playback and pitching? Is there a difference? What is the difference in that tool versus playback versus pitching? Kind of what's the difference there in terms of those kinds of things?
Sure. So this is a hairy subject for many reasons. But I think one of the main reasons is there's just not a lot of formal research on the subject. So at this point, it's kind of just all by observation, like what we see in the field when we do these things.
Right.
So our true effects of pitching and playback and other things, we have very limited scientific knowledge on that. Um, so I can speak from my own personal experience, and that is pitching and playback. Playback being playing the a species recorded song to get a response. Um, Playback is very targeted for the most part. So you're in the field and you're like, I want to see this mourning warbler, which is a really skulky species, and I want to see it pop up. So you play a mourning warbler song, and no other bird around you is going to care
Right.
except for that mourning warbler, and that mourning warbler hopefully will pop up. Whereas pitching is just very generic. It's like, I don't know, like bird shot out of a shotgun, right? So you're going for
You're
everything.
calling all birds.
Right, exactly. So you're not only going to disturb the mourning warbler, but you're going to disturb the chickadees and the titmice and the wrens and everything else around, potentially. Um, which, if you don't have a target that you're necessarily hoping to see in that moment, that can be great. You're just trying to see who's there. Um, so there's some pros and cons there. If you have one specific thing you're trying to see, maybe it's better to just use playback and you're only disturbing that one thing instead of all the birds around you. Um, but the disturbance thing is it's important to think about, especially thinking about what the birds are doing right then. Typically, we think of pitching and playback as being more of an issue during the breeding season when the birds are spending a lot of time and energy on building a nest, raising young, incubating eggs, doing all of these really important things to ensure that we have more birds next year. So when you do playback or pitching during that breeding season, you could be taking them away from that, which you really either, depending on who you ask, you don't want to do, or you want to keep to a minimum. Either way, you want to be just really conscious about that. Versus like right now in winter, the birds are just kind of out there eating, living, um, and it's thought to be not as not as disturbing to them just due to what they're doing. So I don't know if that answered your question or not. Hopefully,
It did, and I think that that's the key to me, like in terms of the difference between using playback and
mm-hmm.
Pitching is more of a generalistic kind of thing. We are saying, hey, there's something going on over here, all you birds come check it out, versus playback being very targeted towards one species, or several species if you have multiple species playing. But you're really, that to me is the large difference in using both of those as tools, if that's something you're using. And I think that's kind of important to know that, sometimes sometimes it's easier to pitch, but you're going to get everything, versus if you're looking for a targeted bird, playback does that. So just kind of the differences there. So anything else you can think of? Oh, I have there. We have a question in the chat. Hold on.
Okay.
Can you play recorded pitching and it work?
Yep, you can totally do that. I've had people come up to me and say, "Can I record your pitching real quick? Because I don't do it that good and I want to use it later." I'm like, okay. That's totally something you can do. Another thing that is kind of along the same lines, that accomplishes sort of the same things as pitching, is that we'll sometimes use what's called a mob tape. And so instead of doing pitching and simulating those small birds attacking an owl or whatever it might be, you can literally play the scold calls of a mix of different woodland species along with the call of an owl. So you're simulating all these birds attacking the owl with the literal recordings of that happening, which is kind of accomplishes the same things. Those species that you use in the recording will get more agitated than your average bird, but it will bring in other things as well. So there are ways to do it with recorded sound. Something else I just thought of that you want to keep in mind is that not all places you go to allow you to use playback, like national wildlife refuges or national parks or things like
State
that.
parks,
State parks.
right? Or no?
No, you're not supposed to do it on state parks. And you're not supposed to do it with endangered or other listed species. So keep that in mind. And when we do all of our birding programs, on private land and everything else, that's something we always ask every landowner is, are you okay with this, or would you rather us not use it? And it's just something to be aware of. It's, like I said, very controversial, and you are disturbing the birds. So not everyone wants you doing that on their property.
No, and that's something, great to think about. Oh, and you had made me have a thought, but now it's kind of escaped me. Where'd it go? What were we talking about before, where you could fish and where you could not fish? What was that? Where were we at?
Before that, we were
Yeah,
talking about, I don't know. I was talking about the recorded playback for mob tapes and things, and state parks, national parks.
oof, it's gone. I don't remember.
Darn.
Okay. Oh, let's talk about what you can't attract when fishing. You are not going to fish out any hawks or any of those type things, correct?
For the most part.
Saying that's we're not going to target. When you're fishing, our target species does not need to be a hawk.
Right. Yeah. With fishing, you're typically targeting pasturing, perching songbirds because that's the sound that you're trying to imitate, right? You're trying to kind of sound like an angry wren or an angry titmouse or something. So yeah, typically we're targeting those small birds. But the more I go and the more experience I get and the more people I talk to, there are some really interesting birds that respond to fishing. Like one of them being shorebirds. For some
Really?
weird reason, shorebirds, when you fish sometimes, will just fly right into you, which is totally bizarre to me. I have yet to have an opportunity to try it, but I really want to one day. But yeah, apparently that works too. So you never know. I've
Well,
also
wonderful.
pitched in, I also have also pitched in like 3 gray foxes. So kind of keep your eye on the ground too.
That's interesting. Well, so we do have several comments. Mark, we have pitched him out of bed. Congratulations. We fish ourselves out of bed almost every Wednesday at 7:30 for cup chats. And we say almost because we don't just have birding with extension responsibilities for our jobs. And so there's some Wednesdays that we both have conflicts and we can't make it. But we have a great lineup coming up of cup chat. So next week we have Stephanie Lopez, and she is one of my favorite people ever. She came to our Learn to Bird program last year, Bryan. You remember her?
Yes. Absolutely, I remember her.
And she had and so she works at the National Butterfly Center down in Rio Grande Valley. And so we're going to excited to have her for our Beyond the Birds cup chat, and we're going to talk about butterflies next week. And then the following week we have Haley from Native Backyard Challenge. And so we are going to talk a little bit about her Native Backyard Challenge and talking about how to get involved in that. She's a Texas master naturalist, and kind of how those native plants really can attract great birds to your backyard or to your area. Bryan, April is talking about owl fishing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Can you share any information about that?
Sure. So what I've said about fishing so far is just sort of imitating those scolding calls of those small birds. And I've also mentioned that you're trying to sort of simulate those small birds attacking or mobbing a predator, one predator potentially being an owl. And so one thing that we can do to sort of enhance potentially our fishing is that we'll also imitate an owl nearby calling. And so depending on where you are, that owl you have to be conscious about what owl species are likely to be seen where you are. So here in New Mexico, when I'm up in the mountains, I will often imitate northern pygmy owl, which is just a repeated whistle, like versus where we go in Texas, the predominant smaller owl that birds are likely to be mobbing could be eastern screech owl, which sounds like this. So when I'm doing my fishing, I'll do fishing and then sort of mix in an owl, just to kind of throw that in there, give it a little bit of realism. And they're like, oh man, there really is an owl over there. We got to go. So that's kind of why we do that.
Well, and that's you are very talented at fishing. I guess, can you whistle a song too? Like how Can you whistle well, or can you just pitch?
I'm not a great whistler. You mean like whistle a bird song?
No, like just whistle. Like I can't even whistle.
Oh, well, I mean, I can kind of,
I can't whistle. I mean,
I
like
can kind of whistle. Let me see. I can maybe do like a canyon run or something to
let's see.
demonstrate my whistling. It's not very good. I'll say that.
Be talented. So like I would assume that if we had to have a pitching contest, even though and I get like benefit of not having very many years of experience, I can't even whistle, so it's not going to be a talent of mine. And I've heard people, not to throw anyone under the bus, and those who shall not be named, and if they're watching, I'm sorry. Maybe I've heard people who don't pitch because they scare birds away.
That can
Have you heard
happen.
this?
That can happen. Yeah. There have been times, even when I'm fishing, where I'll see a vireo or whatever it might be, kind of hiding down in there, and I'll go psh, 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 and then takes off the backside of the bush, and that's the end of that for the day. There, like I said, there are those days where the birds just don't respond. There are the days where the birds would rather just not get involved in drama or whatever. Um, so you just kind of got to kind of just go with what you're observing at the time.
Right. Well, and there's just lots of different factors out there, and how pitching can be used as a tool to help you get a good visual. Especially, and I think for beginner and intermediate birders, sometimes it's really beneficial so you can get a good view of the bird.
Right.
And that kind of comes back to is what are your birding goals? Like is your birding goal to see and really observe the bird? How long do you want to see that bird? Do you want to check the box? I saw the bird. I can move on now. What are your birding goals? And so like one thing for me, like when I do identification, I have to see a bird repetitively, frequently to get that ID down. I'm not one of those people who can look at a bird once and say, oh, that's a Eastern Phoebe, and know that that's an Eastern Phoebe every time I see it after just seeing it once. And so I think that that's one of the differences. Like one thing that I enjoy is when Bryan helps and pitches birds in for me, I get the opportunity to really see them good, versus just seeing bits and pieces of them in the trees. And I also don't like to bird with binoculars, which everybody probably thinks you're weird. And I do a better job now. But when I first started, I didn't even carry a set of binoculars. And one thing Bryan and Maureen know is I do have good eyesight. So like when they were pitched in, I could see them, and I could see them well. And so I really, so that's one of those nice things about when those birds do come in, you can really look at them without having to have that extra. And I just think binoculars get in my way sometimes. And probably that's because I'm just clumsy with using them sometimes, and it just takes forever, and it's just extra. And I just enjoy being able to see them up close. So there's my reason I like it when you pitch birds in for me.
Well, that's a great point too. Is that if I'm just out in the woods birding by myself, unless like you said, I have a very specific birding goal in mind, like I'm trying to find a rare migrating skulky warbler or something like that. If I'm just out and enjoying the birds with no agenda, it's rare that I will pitch. I just do maybe 80% of my birding by ear, knowing what I'm listening to, knowing what I'm hearing, and that gives me a good picture of what's around me at any given time, particularly in the spring. Whereas if I'm out guiding beginner birders, I really want them to have that great experience and to get hooked on birds, so to speak. And nothing does that like a really great, close, intimate experience with a bird.
Right.
So those are just kind of things that I keep in mind. It's there's a lot of things that go into my brain when I'm fishing, like when I'm choosing to fish.
Right. Well, I think it's about your goals and what you want to do and how and where you're at, and a lot of factors play into that. because I think because I'm not going to walk out on my front porch and start fishing just to see what birds are here today. Just not going to do that. Partly because there's not any birds in my yard. Maybe my next house will have a lot of birds, but this one does not necessarily have. It has a very beautiful, large mesquite tree in the front yard.
It does.
I did hang a hummingbird feeder for a hot minute, but I travel so much that it was not feasible to keep clean and keep full. So anyways, it is 8:00 and we try to keep our cup chats to about 30 minutes. So we want to thank everyone for joining us. Bryan, do you have any final thoughts other than you really would encourage everyone to register for Learn to Bird coming up? If you are a newer beginner birder, we'd love to see you at those programs. Those programs are capped to a very small number of participants. So we have to have a minimum of 10 participants to hold the program. And then those programs are capped at 15 participants. It does include, those programs include a professional guide. We do go out in the field quite a bit. It is not, there is some classroom, but it is not an exorbitant number of classroom hours. We spend the first evening eating dinner and doing a little bit of classroom. And then the next afternoon we have, in the heat of the day in the fall, we kind of stay and take a break from birding, and we're in the classroom for a little bit then. But for the most part, it's a great adventure. We'll go owling at both locations. We will, what's some other cool things we're going to do? We'll go owling at both locations, hopefully see alligators at Brazos Bend State Park. We're going to be birding on Long Acres Ranch, which is a neat facility there in Fort Bend County. We'll go to the Kerr Wildlife Management area and should have the opportunity to go off, have some behind the scenes opportunity to look at some areas of the Kerr that are not necessarily always open to the public. So that's kind of a unique thing. Typically going out with Birding with Extension, you can go places you normally can't go. Is that right, Bryan?
That's what keeps bringing me back, is all this access to private lands and behind the scenes areas that the general public does not get to go to. So that's one of my favorite aspects of all of the Birding with Extension programs. So I would highly recommend you join us for some unique experiences.
Well, y'all have a wonderful Wednesday. We're thrilled to be able to join you on Cup Chat for the next 3 weeks. One thing we are going to be doing in the next over the next week is we are going to be posting a Cup Chat logo, and we want to hear what you want to hear on Cup Chat. So if you have some topics or thoughts that you would like us to make sure, see if we can't go out and hunt a special guest for, we want to find, we want to hear what you want to hear on Cup Chat. So we're excited. So make sure when we post those, y'all give us a good comment and let us know. So everyone have a great Wednesday, and we will talk to y'all soon. Bye.